Well, hello everybody and welcome back. We are in week 2 of our class, and this week we are focusing on relevant background factors. So today we're going to do a little catch-up, faith integration. We'll talk about our group project. The next stage of that is your prospectus that will be due this weekend. We'll talk about the relevant background factors that Tubbs covers in your book. I've picked a few out for us to focus in on, and we'll reflect on what we've learned and look ahead. We'll look ahead. We will look ahead. All right, so as you can see, you're already in week 2. It's going so fast. And for our faith integration today, I want to talk about a man named Dr. Viktor Frankl. Now, I will post a quick video of him actually speaking to a group of college students. It's pretty fascinating. Dr. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor and a world-renowned neurologist and psychiatrist. And he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning after surviving really the unthinkable circumstances of concentration camps. He said, and I'll read his quote, "As a professor in 2 fields, neurology and psychiatry, I'm fully aware of the extent to which man is subject to biological, psychological, and sociological conditions. But in addition to being a professor in 2 fields, I'm a survivor of 4 camps, concentration camps, that is. And as such, I also bear witness to the unexpected extent to which man is capable of defying and braving even the worst conditions conceivable." So today we're going to talk about the needs that every person has, the highest of which is the meaning for need and purpose. And Frankl understood something about suffering, and in turn he learned the greatest lessons about searching for meaning, that when we ascribe dignity and worth to others, that they will rise to the occasion. And that's what he's going to talk about a little bit in the video I'll post. The reason I'm bringing all of this up is because I believe that God has called each of us to a purpose, and part of his purpose for you is to continue your education. You're here at this place in this time. And in this time in your cohort, in our classroom community, again, even though we're not able to be physically together, this is one of the best opportunities for you to practice what Frankl was talking about by calling each other up instead of out, by calling each other up to our purpose, up to encouraging and building one another up and strengthening one another, especially knowing that once you leave this space of the classroom community, you're going out into the world, and there are sometimes harsh conditions that we face. There are people we interact with that fail to recognize your dignity and your worth and your purpose. So what better space for us than to practice that here? Romans 8:28 says, "We know that in all things God works for the good with those who love him, those whom he has called according to his purpose." And so something I would love for you to reflect on today is, what can recognizing purpose and meaning in another person's life look like? And how has someone done this for you? How did it make you feel? What were you able to accomplish more? Or how did you kind of walk into life with a different attitude or a different outlook because someone took the time to really recognize your inherent dignity and worth? Something to think about today. All right, so let's talk about our group project, our prospectus. At this point, you've got your team together, you've written your team contract, so you have agreed upon how you're going to meet together and how your workflow and all of those things. And now it's time for you to discuss what you're actually going to do for this project. So by Sunday midnight on Canvas, you will submit one document. It doesn't matter who in your team submits it, just can be one person. Just make sure if it's a Google Doc that everyone on your team has access to it. Doesn't matter the length. I'm not looking for, a certain number of words. Just make sure your team answers all of the questions that are in the prompt on Canvas, which are here. Number 1 being, what's your film or television series that you're going to focus on? If you're doing a TV series, choose a particular episode of that series. It'll just help you from having to do too much work to generalize things. What are some of the topics that your team's going to explore when it comes to group behavior? Do you have a working thesis statement? We think that values and identity are important in a group because of XYZ, and we're going to show this by showing a certain episode of Friends. What's your research plan and your writing plan? So how are you going to go about doing this work? What challenges do you foresee in completing the task? What's your plan to overcome them? And what questions do you have for me? And then when I read through that, if there's certain questions your team has that are just for your team, I'll answer your team back. If I see a theme of questions and I'm like, oh gosh, I need to make something more clear, I'll address the whole group next week in our lecture. All right, reach out to me if you have questions on that. Again, this is Tubbs' model of small group interaction. You should hopefully remember this from last week. It's also in your text. So this week, what we're focusing on are these relevant background factors, which is, there's my little mouse, these factors right here. I won't go over all of those factors in this lesson, but these are all the factors that Tubbs talks about, and it's important for you to consider how each one of these background factors that a person brings into a group and or an organization do affect the relationships and how we communicate and work alongside one another within the group or organization. So we all bring our whole selves into a process, into a group, into an organization. And by understanding and recognizing that, I think it can help us also learn to work together a little bit better. You'll see what I mean as we kind of go along today and talk about these different factors. Of course, I have an office clip for you that also will be on Canvas. This week, it's poor Andy Bernard. If you've watched The Office, he's kind of the happy-go-lucky but a little intense co-worker of Dwight. You know, Dwight's the like lovable weirdo on on the show. Dwight decides he's going to mess with Andy's head by using one of his relevant background factors, using his education and the things that he values the most, which is his education at Cornell, to really mess with him. So go ahead and watch that clip and enjoy. All right, so let's talk about background factors. Remember, our text talked about on around page 117 how behaving in certain ways is usually an attempt by an individual to meet a certain need. And of course, you're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it's important for us to remember also, again, we're bringing our relevant background factors into a group. We're also bringing our needs into the group. And some of our needs are easier to kind of cover up or gloss over maybe than others. But it's important to think about how behavior is multi-motivated, right? If I am coming into a meeting and all I can think about is the fact that I haven't had my morning coffee yet, or I had, I almost got into a car accident on the way into work, or those sorts of things, or I'm having a really hard time in a relationship, in my friendship with someone, I'm dealing with issues of confidence, all of those things, all those needs that we have, we bring those into the group with us. We don't, or in the organization with us, as much as we say we'll leave those things at the door, it's an internal struggle. It's things we're dealing with, or sometimes external, hunger, not feeling well, those sorts of things. So I want to encourage us to think about this hierarchy of needs in the sense of thinking of it as a background factor, as something that someone would bring into a group or an organization that would affect then their behavior, how they get along with others. An easy way to do this is to think about a hungry preschooler, right? When they need snack, they need snack. And you might call them hangry at that point, like, where's my goldfish and my applesauce? But, preschoolers especially, or toddlers have that like one track mind or existence where they're just thinking about that one thing. We're no different as grown-ups. We evolve in some sense, but not so much. We have those things in the back of our mind. And if I'm hangry, I'm not going to do so well in a team meeting, right? Another thing that we bring into the group is our sense of identity when it comes to gender. And there are issues present in group behavior that could be impacted by gender. These are some of the examples here. Tannen in 1995 actually found that women tend to offer suggestions, often with phrases like, you already know this, but, and then conversely found that men might speak louder or longer in a group setting. And so there are some differences in communication. Status in society, depending on the culture and the cultural context, again, which is another background factor. Women or men tend to be more or less dominant based on the culture that they're coming from. the status and group. Loden, in a very interesting study in 1990, found that women are less likely to pull rank and more likely to stress cooperation rather than competition. And so stereotypes, you know, when we think about identical behavior in men and women, it can really be interpreted differently. Perceivers can attach different labels to the same behavior. And I know societally I think we're getting away from this. At least that's what, you know, the research shows us and the trends show us, that we're not so focused on gendering behavior and gendering communication, but it's definitely certainly something to consider as you interact in a group. And so what I want to ask you is, are gender communication differences perception or reality? Have you had the experience of the different types of ways that different genders are communicating, and what did that look like for you? And to get you to think about that, I actually have this fun little pop quiz that's based on research. And I will pick a few of them out. Normally, again, if we'd be in class, I'd have you give a thumbs up or a thumbs down so you can do that to the screen. I'm going to read a phrase and then I'll ask you, do you think it's true or do you think it's false? And then I'll read actually the explanation of why it's true or false. All right, here we go. Number 1, true or false? Men talk more than women. What do you think? The answer is true. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about a study. The research is consistent and clear on this. In classrooms, offices, group discussions, two-person conversations, men talk more than their fair share of the time. For example, in one experiment, male and female subjects were asked to verbally describe pictures and engravings. The women's average description was approximately 3 minutes, and for a man, the average time was 13 minutes. Whoa! That's a big difference, right? Okay, let's look at another one. During conversations, women spend more time looking at their conversation partner than men do. True or false? What do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down? The answer on this one is also true. Many studies with subjects ranging from infants to the elderly have shown that women are much more likely than men to look at their discussion partner. Research shows that a listener of either gender looks more at a speaker than the speaker looks at the listener, which that tracks for me. Another possible reason why women look more frequently at a partner may be their need for an expertise in decoding nonverbal cues. Super interesting. Okay, let's think of another one. Let's see. Okay. True or false? Women are more likely than men to disclose information about intimate personal concerns. So very personal concerns and issues, women are more likely to disclose information than men. What do you think, true or false? Give you a second to reply. The answer is true. Let me read to you a little bit about this. The research is also consistent on this issue. From preschool through high school, male students I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Rewind. There's inconsistency in this research, but most studies show that women are more likely to reveal personal information about themselves. It says here that this pattern may reflect differences in power or status between males and females. Something very interesting. All right, let's do one last one. Okay. Female managers are seen by both male and female subordinates as better communicators than male managers. True or false? Another true statement. Despite the stereotypes, when employees work for a female supervisor, they vote their approval. Female managers are seen as giving more attention to their subordinates, as more open to new ideas, and is more supportive of worker effort than male managers. Very interesting. Studies on elementary schools with female principals show that these schools are warmer, more democratic, and characterized by higher student achievement and higher pupil and parental satisfaction. Oh, that's very interesting. So again, this is all based on research, just to help highlight that there are some differences in gender communication, and that there's pros and cons to both. It's just something to be aware of. It's something to be aware of as we bring, again, our relevant background factors into the group and as we interact with folks that are in the group as well. Another thing is age and generational differences. And I bet if we took time to talk about this, that you all would have lots of interesting stories about generational differences in the workplace. And what I want you to think is, how might generational perceptions affect a team's ability to function? Communication patterns differ from childhood through adolescence and to adulthood and to more advanced age. And what Zenger and Lawrence found, that was cited in Tubbs, that age similarity of group members had a positive effect on the communication of information within project groups. So that means if you have a project group and there are various generations and age brackets represented within that project group, it's likely that there may be some communication mishaps. It's likely that there may be a difference of opinion on how to go about completing the project. And this is all things, again, to be aware of. It's not that, the boomers are wrong and the millennials are right. It's just a different mode of doing those projects, a different mode of going forward. So something to think about. Which generation do you identify with? And I guess, gosh, we need to add past millennials. What is past millennials? Generation Y? Now I have to look. I can't remember. I'll look it up and send some more information about that generation too. But, I would be technically considered Generation X, but I would say, according to these descriptions here, I really identify more as a millennial, globally conscious, considered, I like to be connected. I like quick information. So look at these characteristics. When I think about like my grandfather, for example, who came from what they call the greatest generation or the builders, he very much valued hard work, company loyalty. He worked for Sears and Roebuck Company for decades after World War II. And he retired from that company and he was very loyal to his company. And then I think about, currently it's not such a big deal to move from workplace to workplace. There's not this sense of, I'm going to get this job at this company and I'm going to be here until I retire. So different kinds of perceptions like that can affect a team's ability to function. And there are things to think about when you're thinking about background factors. All right. Right now, what I want you to do is actually pause this video. I'm trusting you to come back to it and click into the link on Canvas that is for the Pixar short Pearl. When you've done that, come on back and we will talk.